Emma, how are you?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good. I'm buzzing that I've got you on. As I said to you, like, there's been so many people asking.
Thank you for having me.
So I'm no pressure, but this will be a good one.
Oh, well, you've built it up now. That's only going to lead to disappointment, isn't it?
We'll cover all manner of your career, the kind of the good, the bad, and the indifferent. I always ask every guest when they come on, what were you like at school? What was Emma Dodds like as a pupil?
A rascal.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's probably the best word to describe it. I was a bit of a character at school.
Right.
Loved the subject I liked,
right.
and absolutely hated everything else and wasn't interested in paying attention.
Right.
School report card always said Emma's very bright, talks too much, which won't surprise you given what I do for a living, and just needs to basically quieten down and stop distracting everybody else. And then the ones like that I enjoyed, like English languages, sport, were all like, yeah, brilliant. So yeah, I was a total rascal at school. I actually went back to school to speak to some of the current pupils there a couple of years ago. And I used to always joke with my mum saying if I ever went back into the school, it'd probably go on fire. But yeah, they let me back in to give some advice. And
you must get the memories coming back then when you were...
Yeah, it still smells the same. It's so bizarre.
Yeah, that is weird, actually.
Yeah, but yeah, at school I was very good at the subjects I liked because I'd apply myself, and in the other ones, honestly, I was just an absolute pain.
Was the majority in the like or dislike camp?
Oh, majority in the dislike. Yeah. I mean, if I look back on school, I basically loved seeing my friends and playing sport.
Social.
That was pretty much it. Everything else, not really bothered about.
That was my report card, actually. Distracts a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I thought that was like a badge of honour.
Well, exactly.
I can't control people who want to talk to me in class.
I was house captain for the sports side of things, was never a prefect when it came to academic things. But I think that was more the teachers doing. I think, well, I'm not sure what movement they thought it would start if I started taking charge of things.
Oh, man. So from that stage then, did you, when you got to like kind of leaving age and deciding on college, uni or none of that, what did you want to do? Job-wise, what were you thinking?
I always wanted to go into sport and I wanted to play sport.
Right.
So I basically played hockey, I played basketball, and I played football against the wishes of my school academic teachers, let's put it that way. But I'd be like the one girl in the playground playing football.
So did they discourage it or just...
In high school, it was sort of discouraged, not by my PE teachers, but sort of by the other teachers who were sort of like, you shouldn't really be doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I was like herring around the primary school playground, kicking people out of the way, and sort of simmered down a bit when I got to secondary school. But I used to play a lot of sport. So I was put forward for scholarships on those 3 sports in the States, and sort of went down the route of, at the time we were sort of talking here, mid to late 90s. So I didn't really feel that I would be good enough to make a career out of being an athlete, as it were. So I chose to do basketball along with journalism. I just sort of thought, okay, if I can't play sport, I quite like talking, so let's try that one. Yeah. And but in the interim, I started working at Radio Clyde when I was 16 on a Saturday, being the runner on Super Scoreboard, and the rest is history. In my gap year, I ended up working there freelance full time, and I didn't even go to uni. So yeah, it just always like, if I can't play the sport, I'm just going to talk about it.
May as well.
And here we are.
Do you regret the not going to uni part at that point, or were you happy doing what you were doing? I did actually for a long time, probably in my 20s, and at this point I had a good job. Yeah. But I sort of felt like I missed out on a lot of social things. A lot of my mates were at uni and, either just finishing up at uni in the early 2000s and, had a whole new circle of friends and these lives that they sort of started to put together. And I sort of felt, God, I went straight from school. Even in the year I took off as a gap year to travel, I was like rigging Glen Sound kits at Tannadice in the freezing cold winter. And you know what I mean? And doing the traffic reports at 6 a.m. in the morning at Radio Clyde on Jam Busters. Did you used to do the Jam Busters line?
Yeah, I used to have to answer the phone.
Man.
I would do it. I mean, I honestly did pretty much any job at Radio Clyde in those first years. Like, I started at 16 being a runner. So that was basically making tea for Paul Cooney and all the guys who were in the studio. Yep. Then I started taking over the second mixing desk. So I had to listen to all the other games. And if there was a goal, let Paul the presenter know, and then he would go to that reporter. Then I started doing the equipment. So I'd take the equipment to the games and set it up for the commentator and the summariser. And then a girl left. So I ended up starting to do some interviews on like a Friday. I was allowed to go out and do that. By this point, I was about 18. And then I'd answer the phone in the morning for the Jam Busters, 6 till 10. Then I would do the interviews during the day. Then I'd answer the phone again from 4 till 6 in the evening. Jeez. And I grew up in the sticks. I mean, I grew up at Outlook Lomondray, so I didn't have a clue what people were talking about. They'd be like, there's a sheep on the road at the Castle Carey roundabout. And I'm like, what's that? What's the Castle Carey roundabout? Or up the, the M90 or the wherever the road is. I didn't have a clue most of the time. And I was thinking, is this actually true? Do I just think I can go and put this on air? So yeah, it was an absolute education. And then I would go and hand out the prizes for George Bowie's show.
Like the phone-ins and things?
Yeah, so he would give away 2.5 donuts. Right. And I'd have to drive in this branded, ridiculous old battered Jeep to somebody's office and like walk in with this big tray of donuts from whoever it was that provided them. Man. I mean, honestly, the amount of nonsense that I did, I would do anything.
But then do you think, looking back at that and having that kind of runner role and doing all those things, do you think anybody that's looking to come into that industry needs that sort of grounding to do all those different things first and try?
Yeah, I do. I think, but like I say back in the day as though I'm 100, but I think back in the day for sure, there was no social media, there was no emails. Yeah. I mean, I used to write letters to people to try and get, my first ever work experience was actually Wheel of Fortune.
Nice.
At STV. Don't mean to name drop.
What were you doing on it?
Runner. Runner. Yeah, and my job in that was I had to go to Marks and Spencer's every day. I mean, that's what the guests would get, the contestants, Marks and Spencer's. Not even like Safeway as it would have been then. They get actually M&S. So I had to go to M&S on Sauchiehall Street, get all the food for the green room, come and take it all out the wrappers and put it down, and then just basically run about if somebody needed something printed or photocopied. I'd have to do all that. But yeah, so that was my first one. And I think you have to sort of put yourself out there. And I know a lot of people do internships now and various different things, but I think there's definitely a lot of life lessons and a lot of lessons that you learn in the industry when you start there, because you basically are the gopher. You go and you do everything for anyone. I was
got to say, you must at points get the fear when somebody's coming towards you, like, what am I going to get asked to go and do now, or what am I going to get hit with here?
Absolutely. There's a few times where I sort of thought, should I do that or should I not do that? And then I'm like, okay, I better just do it. I'm not going to name names, but yeah. And by that, I mean, can you go and get me something? Not anything more than that. And I'm asking, should I do something or should I not do something?
Did you keep any of your letters that you sent?
I don't think, my mum has a box of tricks that are, of like my childhood. So she very well might have one of them. Yeah, she might have some of the replies, to be honest.
Oh, that would be good.
I must ask about that, actually. I don't know.
Because it's not like even now, like, as you say, with social and things, I don't think you get a lot of people that are as proactive as that. I think a lot of people maybe send a couple of messages and then expect something to happen. But that kind of, and it was that method. Like when I left school, that was what my gran used to say, write letters to companies.
Yeah.
And tell them about yourself.
And you never got replies half the time.
And she'd be like, they'll keep you on file. And I'm like, what does that even mean?
I know, it's a big file with all your letters in.
But now it's totally different. And I suppose it's kind of, people will see you on the TV now and see what you do and think, I just want to get to that point. But not the 10, 15, 20 years that it takes to get to that point. It's like, I want everything yesterday.
But that's a sign of the times as well, though, with influencers, isn't it? I mean, you can literally be picked off a street and be handed something to advertise, and before you know it, you've got 1 million followers, and that is your rite of passage. If that's the route somebody wants to go down, fair enough. But
100%.
I think when it comes to live reporting and live news reporting, you need a bit more behind you to know necessarily how to react in different situations. Yeah. That I think in broadcasting particularly, if that's if it's that route you want to go down, rather than sort of social media, reality TV type thing. I mean, I think there's almost like two worlds of broadcasting now. There's like the news sports side, or there's the actual influencer role. Yeah, it's 100%. Quite different. Yeah.
What about, so obviously you're in Clyde, you're doing that role. When did you then start to think, or was there a moment where you thought, this is it for me? Was there like an opportunity that came up, or a chance, or?
Well, I think the sort of main point of it was, so after those initial years of just doing like a Saturday or a Wednesday if there was midweek games, the gap here when I did start to do all those other roles, which certainly made me a bit more of a rounded employee. Basically, if no one else wants to do it, just ask Emma, was really how it went. I had to have a sit down with my parents and just think about, was I going to go to uni? Yeah. Was I going to go over and end the gap year?
Did they want you to, or were they happy with what you were doing?
They were quite happy, but I mean, because like I say, at this point, I was lucky enough that I was actually allowed out to go and do interviews with people. Yeah. You know, my first ever interview, I remember, was John Spencer at Motherwell. I was so nervous. I mean, I was actually almost taller than him, which is quite funny, but I had my little Marantz, which was a cassette, and you had to press the recording, the playing record at the same time. I was absolutely terrified that I was going to mess it up and not record it. And I mean, I was so nervous. I don't even know what I said in the interview because I can't even remember the sort of questions. I think I still have that tape somewhere in the house, but yeah, that was my first ever one. And by then, you'd get to go out on a Friday, and I was told you can only go to the press conference if you ask the first 2 questions. I'd be like, oh God, I know, like this, but ultimately you just chalked in. You got to deal with it. And so that was really nice because not a lot of people at my age were doing that. Yeah, 100%. And not a lot of females actually at that time were doing it as well. But then, I spoke to my parents and I also spoke to Paul Cooney at the time, who was the managing director. I think he was the managing director at Clyde, and just being like, what should I do here? What if I was coming to you now as a person with this skill set? What would you do? And he said, I would hire the person with the life experience in broadcasting over the degree right now. Right. And I mean, I was in Clyde and there was people coming from like Glasgow Uni and Glasgow Caledonian who were like 23, 24, coming to be shown round. This is what a radio station is, because they'd just done the degree at uni but didn't have the live experience. They hadn't done
the practical stuff.
Yeah, and that's no fault of their own. It's just the way it used to be. And so it sort of made my mind up for me. I was like, why am I giving up a job that I'm sort of already making my way in, albeit very early stages, to go and study to then try and get back in? So it was a bit of a roundabout way, but I think at the time I made the right decision. I still stand by I made the right decision. I don't regret anything. But to go back to your earlier question, I did for a couple of months during my sort of mid-20s think, that way when you're looking to do different things and maybe move abroad and people say, what's your university qualifications? I didn't have any. I just felt a bit inadequate because it's not because I was daft. It was just really circumstances that made it that way.
But then I suppose that the journey you've went on anyway kind of emphasises that you made the right decision.
Yeah, well, you'd like to say
do
that.
It. So it's probably kind of, the university side is important and it's brilliant if you want to do it, but there's a lot to be said for the hands-on experience and going in and, as you say, like you're going in and learning stuff at 17, 18 that people then 6 ahead of you, years-wise, don't have that knowledge.
I also think in sort of this period of my life, like if you make a decision in the cold light of day when you've weighed up the pros and cons, you can't really regret it. No. If you make a decision on a whim, ill-advised, like without all the information or, you're not thinking straight or whatever, then I think you have justification for that. But I feel like I sort of weighed it up and that was the right thing at the time. Yeah. So, I never got that gap year to go travelling.
I suppose it was worth it though. I suppose it was worth it.
Yeah.
See and I know you touched on it there, obviously, when you were speaking to Paul, when you were one of the kind of few females doing it at that point. Was that more of a challenge at the time, or did you notice that it was as big a challenge at the time, or it was kind of predominantly one over the other?
Do you know what's weird is like I wasn't really conscious of it.
Yeah.
I mentioned it, earlier, I grew up in a small village called Arrochar up in Loch Long. Sort of quite early set my ideas on what I wanted to do and wasn't really that conscious that there wasn't really anyone else like that out there. I was a big fan of Hazel Irvine. Yeah. And, I was lucky enough to do a work experience weekend there with her. Rob McLean was there, Chick Young. Alison Walker was also working in the industry then, she was in there. And so it really hadn't hit home how unusual it would have been for a career choice until you're sat in a press conference room surrounded by white middle-aged guys. Middle-aged is probably being a bit generous to some of them. Guys who are all looking at you like, who is this and what is she doing in here? Type of thing. And then over time, I mean, you could hear, every now and again. Yeah. But also part of that was down to my own stupid questions or inexperience. I mean, I'm sure I asked some daft questions that they were probably like, but I sit in press conferences now and people ask daft questions all the time. I don't talk to them.
Well, I was going to say, that
you
person.
Again.
But then I suppose as well that's testament to you, because a lot of people would buckle in that situation and maybe be like, I don't know if I can do this. Yeah. Did you have points like that? Like maybe not with press conferences, but was there points where you were like,
I don't know if this is for me?
Did I think that? Yeah, I mean, I think definitely at times. I mean, after that Radio Clyde experience, I moved into Rangers Media, which is slightly different because you're a little bit more protected because you're in a club media environment.
Yeah.
So, and again, your way of looking at a situation is different because you're obviously employed by the club. You're not going to go out and start asking ridiculous questions in your interviews. But it was a really steep learning curve because that was at the time when we went from doing the Rangers news and the website to then bringing in an online TV channel. Yeah. And so you're filming and doing like interviews to camera. And I mean, I didn't have a clue what I was doing. You know what I mean? Honestly, I didn't have a clue. You know what I mean? I didn't have a clue how to ask questions in that format. Yeah. And so, you know, that was like a massive learning curve in itself. But at Radio Clyde, I wasn't so much on air. So I was almost protected from it. Really, I wasn't like on air giving an opinion. I was allowed to go to the pre-recorded press conferences. Yeah. And so I had that sort of buffer between that. So I don't think I was exposed to it at that point. It wasn't really, I would say, till I ended up working for Setanta later on down the line that I started doing pitch side reporting, that you're then, when you're open to everything, aren't you?
I've got to say, memories of John Spencer must have came
flooding back. At least I wasn't having to record it. It was someone else's job.
Do you still get nerves when you're speaking to people, or is it just, do you feel it's just part of your job now and it's...
Do you know, actually just, it depends who and it depends what the event is. You know, I think there is a comfort zone of the daily chore, like daily chores is not really the right word to say about a job you love, is it? The mundane stuff that you do every week. But it's like familiarity breeds contempt, doesn't it? It's like that. And I'm very conscious of that, not to ever be too lax in it, because again, on air, you look like a right idiot if you're not prepared, or you do get caught out. But yeah, I think like the European finals, for example, you know, going over to do a live show there is amazing and it's unique. And I think conscious that it's a special moment. It's the end of a season. It's, you know, a European final that, you know, teams would love to get to and you're lucky enough to be there. So I think that adds an expectation on your own shoulders. So I would say there's a few, I think butterflies and nerves are great. You know what I mean? I think you need them.
100%.
And it shows that you're sharp and you're on edge. And, you know, I think things like that. I also, you know, if I interview maybe managers I'm not massively familiar with, again, they don't know me, I don't know them so well. You might be a little bit more on edge because you don't quite know what to expect all the time. And of course, you see them often now on television elsewhere that you think, oh, you know, again, you do have to be doubly on your guard for things like that.
Do you get that? And I've always been curious of this when I watch interviews pre-game or after game. If you're speaking to someone and it's maybe somebody you've never spoke to before, or it's a player, or it's a one-off thing, how soon can you tell if it's not going to go to plan?
Question one.
Can you just sense right away from the...
You can actually sometimes sense when they walk in the room.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can sometimes sense when they walk in the room because, well, it depends on the result. But even like a winning manager or a player that you expect to be like, oh, quite jovial about it. They all have their own agendas now, you know what I mean? And like they've all got their own little personalities that either makes them famous or they see somebody else doing it and then they decide to do it. Like, I mean, I interviewed Erling Haaland a few months ago. They'd just beaten Nottingham Forest like 7-0 or something ridiculous like that. And he's clearly fed up doing interviews. You know what I mean? Like he's clearly fed up talking about himself. And so you learn quite quickly after the first two questions that he's not interested in talking about himself. So then you start asking about his teammates and about the players and he opens up a bit more and that type of thing. But it's just the sort of daily challenge of trying to read the subject. And then, you know, Pep Guardiola in that exact same game, you'd expect him to be absolutely thrilled. And all he was doing was picking holes in things he didn't do right. And you're like, okay, I mean, come on. Sometimes they have an idea in their head of what they want to say. And they come in and regardless of what you ask them, they don't even answer that question. They just bob on and say what they want to say anyway. And it's normally about television scheduling or something nonsensical like that.
That must be hard for yourselves, because then your mind must be going 100 miles an hour at that point going, right, this isn't the plan, this isn't the structure here, where do we go? And more so with like Pep especially, like I've watched him on Sky Sports and he has destroyed people. I mean sometimes you just don't know what you're going to get. I've played a few rounds of golf with Pep though, so you know, I'd like to think that that's maybe softened it, but it doesn't because after a game he still comes in his zone and the same thing, you know what I mean? It's just the same off the pitch as he is.
He's so intense on a golf course, like talking about like 20 practice swings. I'm like, just hit the ball, man. Come on, hit the ball. I mean, I take 20 practice swings and they're actually not practice. I just missed the ball. But like, it's funny. It's funny when you see people out of context and doing something different.
But I suppose for you as well, though, it helps with those relationships.
Yeah.
With managers, etc. If you do get to know them outside of that intense kind of environment.
Living in Dubai actually was really good for that because they come over in a totally different mindset.
Yeah.
They're not on their guard like they are over here. They're not, I mean, it might be, I left Dubai in 2016, so it might be different now and with social media, etc. But yeah, you'd quite often be able, and you know, generally they were over for some sort of promotional event or, you know, something that's quite nice. They don't really mind doing it, or they're getting paid for, so they don't mind doing it. So you got to see a totally different side of people over there. That was great. And I did so many sort of live events over there with people, dinners and different like sort of sponsor events. It's amazing how open they are. You know, if you tell people put your phone away, you know, don't record this, it doesn't make social media, man, you have a great old night because they're quite relaxed. It's a real eye opener. And then you get over here and you see just how uptight and, you know, for good reason, because you know yourself, people jump on the slightest thing anyone says. And, you know, social media is a pretty unforgiving place now.
Yes. Well, that's what I was going to ask you, obviously, with the whole Rangers media side. As much as that's a great opportunity for you, it then comes with that whole goldfish bowl of one or the other.
Yeah.
And as you say, obviously, you're coming from Arica. How was that environment? Because that's the most unforgiving probably of all of them, but how did you find it?
I mean, it's so bizarre as well. Like my family are from Newcastle, right? I was born in Newcastle. Every single member of my family is from Newcastle, right? But my parents lived in Scotland before I was born.
Right.
My mum went back to Newcastle to have me, came back to Scotland. So I've lived my whole life or childhood in Scotland, hence the accent. And so we lived in Edinburgh, we lived up north, and then we lived in Arica. And like my dad's a massive Newcastle fan. He used to go to Tynecastle when we lived in Edinburgh because they used to run a hotel just round the corner.
Right.
And then when we moved to Arica, the Skull were the brewery that provided the beer for our hotel. And this is how long ago it was. It was the Skull Cup. And so my dad's friend in the village who ran the pub was a massive Rangers fan. So it's like, right, Skull have got us hospitality. Let's go to the Rangers game. So that's how I started as a Rangers fan. That's how life for me at the age of like 6 started.
Right.
And it's really funny because it could quite easily have been any other club.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is not something that's been passed down through my family. I mean, as it happens now, my dad is a season ticket holder, and, you know, as is my stepbrother. So it's funny how it all works out.
Came from Skull Lager.
Came from Skull Lager, I know. I mean, I love a pint. I can't get to a Skull anymore, but yeah, there's definitely something in that. But yeah, it's funny how you then get pigeonholed into something.
Yeah.
And you know, the thing that makes me laugh is that every single person who does my job does it because they grew up following sport.
Yeah.
So that in itself leads to affiliations to whichever team it is. And yeah, it's just really funny because they seem to think that you can't support a team and be neutral. Yeah. That is the life of every supporter. But you know, you have to put your loyalties aside in our job. Yeah. Every single person does. The 100%. Bit that makes me laugh though is why can't you be a Rangers or Celtic fan, but you can be like down south a Chelsea fan or a Leicester fan or a Norwich fan, or you can be an Arsenal fan or a Newcastle fan, and you're still allowed to do those games and it's fine. Yeah. Or you can be a Hearts fan, you can be a St Johnstone fan, you can be a Dundee United fan, you can be an Aberdeen fan, and you can still do your job without being questioned. But you can't be a Rangers or Celtic fan. Yeah. And it's just the ridiculous nature of the world we live in.
If you trying to explain that to people outside of Glasgow, people must think you've got two heads.
Totally.
It's crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's hilarious though, because you know, every one of us supports a team. Yeah. And you just don't, it doesn't come into your daily life as a broadcaster when you're on air. It's totally different. But how many people who do my job go to watch their team on a weekend when they're not working? Yeah. Everyone.
Well, that's the thing as well, because if you've got a game, you're presenting and you've got the panel giving their opinions. So it's not as if you're throwing opinions in about how bad somebody's playing, or it's so unbalanced the way people look at it. You read some things on Twitter and you're like, wow.
I also find it really funny though how people think that players from other ex-players, you know, who are now pundits, can't commentate or summarise on a game that involves another team. And you're like, they still have an opinion. You know, they've still played the game.
Yeah. It's not going to influence a game.
I understand it, and I understand why people like to have former players from that team, because they can totally relate. And actually, there is a little bit of empathy there, a little bit of bias, as it were. Yeah. But you don't have to have that. No. You know, I mean, the best pundits do games of teams they've never played for. Yeah. And they can still perfectly logically summarise a game.
100%.
I just think personalities on screen and on the radio make the show. Yeah. And it shouldn't really matter what what the background is, or it should matter because they obviously have to have played the game or for whatever reason they're there. But Ali McCoist, I think, is a prime example. Like, he's loathed and loved in equal measure, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, we're walking down the street and honestly, I have never been with a guy that is so loved. And like, I mean, he literally can't walk from A to B without being swamped by people who are nothing to do with like Rangers or Sunderland or St Johnstone or anything like that. Nothing to do with it. They love him. Or he's getting absolute pelters.
Yes.
It's hilarious.
There's no middle. And I think probably worse for him now because he done the World Cups and things with Clive Tilsley, that whole thing grows and grows. And I see tweets online of people like, oh, I love him on commentary. I'm like, he's been like that for 10 years.
He's not changed. I know.
There's nothing new here.
I know. But it is. It's really funny. And it's like, everybody should be allowed to support their team, whatever their choice is. And whatever their background doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, we're all paid to do a job.
100%.
I also love it when people critique you online. You know, you get critiqued for your performance that day. Like, obviously the players do on the pitch. But, you know, somebody said to me, I think you're really good on telly. But honestly, live sort of dinner presenting, like emceeing is not your thing. No, I'm telling this out of kindness. It's not your thing.
Wow.
And I was like, thanks for, like, I didn't obviously reply because I pretty much have a no reply policy. Otherwise, like, you could be there all day.
What are you supposed to say to that?
I know, but it's sort of like, I'd love to know what these little fannies do, like, at work. You know what I mean? How many mistakes they make in their daily existence of work. You know, sorry, you didn't answer the phone properly there, or you didn't drive your van properly today, or you didn't do this properly today, and as a result, I'm going to tell Twitter.
That's wild. But then you also get folk that will take a 5-second clip and turn it into something.
Of course it is. It's just
insane. But see, for you, obviously with DMs and things, does it bother you? Has it ever bothered you? Have you just learned to kind of...
I think initially it bothered me. Yeah, it definitely bothered me. Even stupid things on Twitter, like, you know, for example, there's a story breaking and you hear on good authority something's happening. And you're never going to put out, you know, dud news. Yeah. And then for one reason or another, it doesn't happen. And then people come on saying, like, what do you know about nothing? You know, and like initially that would be like, because I'd be like, get my back up and be like, well, you don't deliberately. You know, that story at that point in time was actually true. Yeah. Whether or not it's happened now, for one reason or another, hasn't happened. Used to get my back up. Now, honestly, I don't care. Yeah. I don't care at all. Actually, I don't even read half of them. If you come into my messages and you're not actually, you know, in, if you're not in, you're not probably going to get read. But yeah, I just block, you know, I'm not having hatred and shit on my timeline, but half the time I actually just feel sorry for people that is the most important thing they have to do that day is drop somebody a line to criticise them.
So I was saying to you, like, it's...
Where'd you find the time?
I understand people have these random thoughts. Yeah. We all do when we watch football or something, but to then go, I'm going to go and message that person and let them know, what do you think they're going to do?
I know.
Should I come back to you and go, oh, critique me some more on that, please?
Yeah. I actually sometimes, like, have so many things, like, that I would put out on social media that I think, oh, that'd be quite interesting to talk about. And I thought, actually, I can't be bothered. Like, I would say 80% of what I think I'm going to put on social media, I know I can't be bothered. And it annoys me a bit because actually sometimes I think they would be quite good talking points. Yeah. But then you know you're going to get... it can be something as absolutely stupid as like, why do guys wear shorts all the time now? Yeah. This is really...
With a jacket.
Puzzling me. And a hat.
Yeah.
Well, why don't you put trousers on?
Yes.
So like a genuine question like that baffles me on a daily existence.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I can't actually be bothered because God knows what's going to come back in.
You should have a week where you just do it. I'm going to put all these random thoughts out. I'm doing it.
I know.
I don't even care. I'm doing it.
I know. So I just can't be arsed with the aggro, so I'm just not going to bother.
I'll ask a short question on this. You mentioned obviously working in Dubai. How was the working abroad experience? Because again, that's something that people might not automatically look at or want to go and do, but how did you find it from your point of view?
Oh, I loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so initially when I left Rangers, I moved to Paris, so that would have been in 2007. And I think I hit a wall at that point where I was like, right, I'm now 26 and I think this goes back to not going to uni. Yeah. Like I've never been away. I've literally gone from school to work and I've been in and around Glasgow my whole life and I'm in this Goldfish Bowl and that's all I know.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need out of it sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that moving to Paris was challenging in the sense of the language, you know, and again, I mean, I was 26. I mean, you should be big enough to go and live on your own abroad, but it was still a bit of an eye-opener, you know, finding a flat and a bank account and stuff. And I mean, the company I worked for were great and helped me with that, but it's still got its own challenges. So doing that, I think, was like a really big step, but it's not that far from home. You know, you're an hour and a half on a flight. It's not that bad. And then like living in London and stuff. But then when the chance came to go to Dubai, I was like, oh God, I mean, that's quite far away. It's 7 hours in a flight.
Yeah.
But it was amazing. Yeah, it's actually probably one of the best things I've ever done because I feel it diversified my experience within broadcasting because it was a slightly different role. And so that experience, and then I worked with such a broad selection of sports that in itself opened up like a lot of doors for me as to what I like doing, what I don't like doing, and just networking with different people, you know, just seeing how other sports do it. And I mean, it's, you know, when you're in football, it's such a big sport over here. Yeah. You know, it dominates everything, really. That, you know, you look at like F1 or you look at like World Rugby or you look at the golf, like the DP World Tour, the, you know, the ladies tour that comes over. And it's, I mean, they themselves are international giants. Yeah. And, you know, just having the experience to learn from that and actually interact with other athletes and how they deal with things was really nice. And it was brilliant. Like I would honestly encourage anybody to take the plunge if you can, you know, obviously weigh up the risks and make sure you're backed with like a visa and healthcare and all of the different things that you'll need when you're there. I wouldn't suggest just popping off to the Middle East on a whim, you know, and going in on a holiday visa. But, you know, if you're in on the right conditions, you know, and working for a good reputable company, then I would definitely.
Because you were one of the first females to really be out there. Producing, etc.
Yeah, and that it was a big consideration at the time, but it was actually one thing my company wanted to do. Yeah. Because a guy had done it before me and he'd left, and the sort of, I mean, my sort of line manager, the head of my station was a female from down south, and her boss above there, sort of the head of the network, like COO, he was Australian. Right. And he then checked into the Emiratis who were there because obviously the head of the company as part government owned was Emirati, and like Sue and Steve massively pushed to get me in. And because it's funny, I'd actually contacted them before about doing some freelance stuff whenever I was out in the region. Yeah. And I was just sort of thinking in like holidays and things. Yeah. And then they emailed me saying, would you ever be, you know, up for coming out full time? And I was a bit like, oh no, I don't think so. And then I was like, would I? And then the more I spoke to them, actually, the more attractive the opportunity seemed. And it was just something totally different. I mean, I was excited getting on the flight to go over there, but then, you know, you get there and the first week in the door, I was like, oh my God, what have I done? This is like, I don't really know what I'm doing. I think I've had that the first week in pretty much every job I've ever done. Like, I don't know what I'm doing. So yeah, it was interesting, like really interesting. Like one of the bosses, because the company it's the Arab Media Group is like one strand of it is the Arabian Radio Network. So that is 9 radio stations in 6 languages. Okay. That's one arm. And then there was like a theme park and then another thing called like Global Village, which is another attraction in Dubai that was also under the umbrella. So I had to have an interview with like the head of the entire company, not just the head of the radio side. And I remember going in and he's wearing this Barcelona baseball cap. And I was like, so, you know, I'm a bit nervous, you know, making sure my etiquette's correct and all these things. He's like, so what do you know about Barcelona Football Club? And I was like, Messi plays for them and, you know, they've won the Champions League. And I mean, I can't even remember what it was, but I was rambling on. And he's like, good. Well, thank you for coming.
That was it?
That was it.
Brilliant.
And so I had a meeting with him. Like, I'd gone through a much more rigorous interviews with the other people, but I was like, wow, I think he just actually wanted to know if I knew anything about football. It was really bizarre. So yeah, after I passed that test, I was like, okay.
Just so it wasn't like a random team like Kidderminster Harriers or something.
I'd have been like, that actually happened when I applied for the job at Sky down south. I went in, they were starting this new radio branch of Sky Sports News. And so they were hiring a completely new team to go to live in Leeds. And so Setanta had gone down. I'd gone back to work at Rangers to sort of fill in the Rangers TV hole that had been made by Setanta collapsing. But when Setanta went down, I'd sent my CV to Sky and they'd been like, we don't have anything, but we'll keep you on file. And I was like, yeah, whatever. You know, that file we were talking about, that big file. And then about 6 months later, I got this phone call saying, would you still be interested in coming to work for Sky? Can you go to an interview in Leeds? And I was like, all right, brilliant. So I get the train down and I got my address and I go. And I'm met by these 2 guys, Mark and Tim, absolutely lovely. So they're like chatting away and they're like, right, before we do the interview, I'm just going to give you this quiz. If you could just fill out this quiz. So they left me and I was like, I mean, if you've ever watched Sky Sports News, you see how diverse the coverage of sport is. It's like cricket. And I mean, so this was 2010, wasn't it? 2009, 2010, something like that. So, I mean, I only really got into cricket when I started at Sky. My dad had always watched cricket, you know, and I'd watched it with him. I didn't really know much about it. I knew what a googly was, but I mean, I was a Yorker, but that was about it. So there's like these county cricket questions, NFL questions, horse racing.
Oh, man.
I mean, there was about 3 on football. and about 2 on rugby. So I managed to get those, and I was like, well, I've not got this job, have I? So they came back in, and I was like, like so relaxed, like chatting away, like not a care in the world. Because I was like, there's no way I've got this job because I've literally answered nearly all of those questions incorrectly. And then when they phoned me about 3 days later, they're like, we'd like to offer you the job. I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, you were just so relaxed in the interview.
Suppose the quiz has helped you then in a way?
I said, that's because I thought I had no chance of getting the job.
Oh, man.
Yeah, but they're like, yeah, we just really liked you, like your attitude and like your personality. And like, we knew you knew about sport, but obviously these are quite specialist. And I was like, all right. Because I got on the train to come home. I was like, oh, well, that's that one done. Hilarious, I know.
Oh,
honest to God.
But that must have been good as well working for Sky because that's a huge...
Yeah, it was great.
Huge setup.
And it was brilliant though because we all started at the same time in that team.
Mm-hmm.
So Tim Thornton's now on down south. So I worked there for 2 years and then went down to Austerley for the last year. And then that was when BT Sports started. So I left to go and join BT. But it was brilliant. Yeah, I mean, basically that's what I wanted to do when I started out. Like I wanted to go and work for Sky.
Yeah.
Like, you know, that's what I used to watch football on.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And getting to do it. So there was Tim Thornton, who's down, well, he's on now. He's like the Yorkshire guy. Ben Ransom, he does like Manchester City, Manchester United. Tom White, who's in the studio then down there. Dave Reed's in the studio down there. Chris Siddle's still down there. There's loads of us that have come through there. Connie McLaughlin worked there for a bit. She came down after I started there in Leeds. There's like there's a brilliant atmosphere because like most of us were single, sort of mid to late 20s, had all relocated to Leeds. Yeah. And so it was a bit like the university experience that I'd never had.
It's like just like uni really, isn't it?
And so quite a lot of the guys are still at Sky. It's a shame the radio, I left to go down to Austerley, and then it was when I was in Dubai it actually stopped because it wasn't really feasible because of the advertising revenue. It was a shame it didn't work because the concept of it, of having Sky Sports News in your ear, and it was done in sort of 15-minute bulletins. It was really clever. You think, you're jumping on a train, you just want to know the headlines, jump on it.
The amount of people that listen to like talk sport things for half an hour So it was a great idea at the time, but it just didn't quite pan out that way for them. But that was brilliant. But that was a total example of going into an interview where I was like, oops, not going to get this. I would take the other one, tell me about Barcelona, but it's sold. Away we go. What do you want to know?
Yeah, it's hilarious.
And then on to BT. See, from your point of view, and I've asked a few people that work in the industry, how do you balance the whole kind of side of things where you can be X amount of months without anything?
As a freelancer,
or something doesn't come in, because I would have the full fear in that situation, but I'm always curious to people living that or they've been living it. How do you cope with that side of things?
It's definitely something you have to get used to.
Yeah.
Touch wood, it's never normally too bad, and actually it's normally so busy that the downtime is quite nice at times. Yeah. But you do. I mean, I get like 2 weeks into the summer and I'm like, when's the season starting again? And I panic every year. It's funny. But then you just start looking at other things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, I don't mean looking at other things, but you start thinking outside the box about things that do you want to do? You know, I mean, do I want to broadcast for the rest of my life? I don't know. I'm passionate about other things that I don't know if I'd maybe like to do that in time or do it side by side. So maybe being freelance allows you the time to do something else. But it's definitely something that you have to get used to when you come out of a full time, like a staff job. Yeah. Because you're your own boss. You work. Yeah. But then you're not able to do a job, then does it risk going to somebody else? Is it a proper juggling act? Yeah. I'm getting better at it, and about the sort of, if you can't do something, you can't do something, if you're already booked. But like taking time off for social events is something that I'm still not great at. Like I've got a wedding coming up and it's in the middle of a Champions League week and I'm the best man of all things. I mean, it's my best mate that's getting married. And since we were little living in Arica, he's like, you'll always be my best man when we get married. And I'm like, right, okay. And so I'm his best man and it's in a ski resort. I mean, it's not even handy. It's not like an hour away. No, it's not like it's in Troon. So it's a bit of a balancing act. And that's the sort of thing that works for me because I am actually off that weekend. Yeah. But I would have had rugby, but I've had to take the rugby off. So that is frustrating when you have to turn down work. And a lot of people don't tend to go to social engagements during the season. You know what I mean? They just have a blanket look.
Yeah. Some players, really?
Of course. Yeah. Of course. And that's just how it works. But then there are times where you have to think, okay, if you give people enough notice and it's some sort of something I can't really get out of, then it's acceptable. But it is. it definitely gives you sleepless nights at times of what happens tomorrow if I'm if something happens, touch wood again, touch wood. But
this is why you don't post things online. It's that 80% thing.
I know. See, but it's just, you're only really a F up away from not being on air anymore. Yeah. So it is. And like we were saying earlier, in an era of social media, it can be pretty brutal because people get cancelled for stuff that I don't necessarily agree with them being cancelled for.
And people get cancelled now and you're like, I don't actually know what's happened there. And it's just a mass wave.
Yeah. And I just think, gosh, you just have to sort of love your job and try and enjoy it while you can, because you really don't know what I think it's like anything. Nobody knows what tomorrow's got.
No.
Health-wise, anything like that. So it's just try and, have faith in yourself and keep good relationships. And if you do your job well, hopefully you can still be there tomorrow. Still be there next season.
Fingers crossed.
I know.
What do you think, and it maybe not from BT, from kind of anything career-wise, what's the kind of biggest learning that you've taken?
Oh, it's really interesting. I sort of feel like I've learned something, honestly, everywhere I've been, because especially when you move abroad, what I mean? Like moving to Paris and working in another language, like working in the music industry that then sort of took me back into football was like mental. It's like at times I look back at that and think, how did I even get to there? How did I sit in that meeting when half the time I didn't have a clue what was going on because I couldn't understand any of it?
I was going to say, how did you find the language?
Yeah, brutal, because what you learn at school is not what comes out of their mouth. I'm telling you right now, with all the abbreviations, and then you got all the sort of social elements to it and meeting new friends. And it's weird. Like there's so many life lessons that I think you take from it all. Do you know what I mean? And then, to nail it down to one, do you know what I'd actually say is, going back to that very original point of if you make a decision in the cold light of day, like don't regret anything and don't say no. Just if you can say yes to do it. Like I have read part of that book where that person just says yes to opportunities. Yeah. And I've tried to break it down, because if I say yes to every opportunity, I'll be drunk for like a month because I'll be out. Like, do you know what I mean? I would just never really, I'm juggling a million balls of trying to socialise and work and doing all these things. You have to limit your yeses. But I think if you try and go on a sort of journey yourself, like think about where you want to go. A lot of where I am now is down to the fact that I just said yes to a lot of stuff, and probably said yes and then thought about it afterwards and thought, was leaving Rangers to go and live in Paris the right thing to do? I don't know, but actually, I loved it and it was brilliant. So sort of worked out at the time.
At least you're trying it, I suppose, rather than because if you then just say no, you would then sit and go, I could have been in Paris now, or I could have been sitting in Govan when it's pissing the rain. I would have those thoughts right away. Yeah,
there's totally. My instinct was always home will always be there. Yeah. Then there's a caveat of that, which is one of the reasons I moved home from Dubai, is that the people are not always there. You know what I mean? Like seeing your family twice a year is hard, and so there's that element of it. I know they can come and visit. But there's a number of things into that. Do they get holidays? Can they afford it? There's a lot of things to consider there. But it's just life experiences and meeting people, I think actually in my line of work and in my personality, I love people. Like I love meeting new people, and I like talking, and I like learning about new things and new people. That keeps me interested in life. If I know what I'm doing exactly this time next week, I'd go insane. But I can't operate like I'm a planner in the sense that I like to be organised, but I hate what's the word I'm looking for? I hate not like a schedule, like repetition. I know pretty much this time next weekend I'll be doing a game. But I don't know how that game's going to go, and I don't know what the topics of conversation are going to be. It's not like I'm just going to be on repeat. Like I know at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning I'm going to be doing the same thing, but that keeps me interested in life. That's another thing that goes back to school. My attention span is like a flea. Like a goldfish. So, I'm like, what about that?
So you're watching a game and something controversial, you must be buzzing to get to half time.
Oh, I'm like, let's talk about that. Yeah, I know. I'm all over the Kevin Keegan style of football. Make it 4-3. Forget the defenders, that's overrated. Let's just score goals. That's how I'd like to play football. That's how I played Championship Manager back in the day.
God, that's an addiction right there.
That's an addiction that used to get us through the close season in the summer.
Oh, really?
By Rangers, we'd all have Champ Manager on the laptops. That way.
You lose so much of your life.
Oh my God, honestly. I know. That's when it was on a laptop. That's how old that is. But like back in the day, it's It's a funny old world.
You could just be a coach. Seeing that young guy in
Nowadays,
France just now that's coaching.
Somebody will need to pay my fine though. I'm not paying it.
So I always like to know, obviously you spoke about a lot of high points. Has there been any kind of low moments for you, or things where maybe a job hasn't worked out, or you've kind of had a moment where you've just been just not where you want to be level-wise?
I'm probably my biggest critic. Like, if I end an interview and I either haven't had a chance to ask a question that I wanted to ask, or something's happened and I've not forgotten to do it, but it's not really come up. You know what I mean? Like, I'll be driving home, like, raging with myself.
Really?
Like, I'm really annoyed at myself. Yeah. Like the tiniest wee thing as well. Like, even like a couple of weeks ago at the Edinburgh Derby, when we got Robbie Nielsen in the studio, and it was his first win at Easter Road, sorry.
Yeah.
And so I'd asked the first couple of questions, and then Coisty asked a question. But just before Coisty asked the question, I was about to say, so I bet when you thought about your first win at Easter Road, you wouldn't have envisaged you were sitting in the stand for it, type of thing.
Aye.
But Coisty asked a question, then Michael asked a question, then we were running out of time, and then I didn't get to ask a question, and then I was really annoyed, like driving home. I was like, I can't believe I didn't ask that. I mean, people will be watching that thinking, she doesn't know what she's doing. And you know what I mean? Like, so I get really irritated with myself, like with things like that. Or if like I stumble in a piece to camera, like, because I think you're only as good as your last broadcast.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Or you make it, like you look at the wrong camera, or there's just lots of stupid things that happen. Yeah. Or there's stuff going on in your ear that people don't hear, that can be frustrating. You know what I mean? Like if there's something happened that I know that I've not done my best, that annoys me. There was, what else has happened? I mean, there was that situation, years ago at Rangers TV, which everybody seems to talk about when they Google my name, of like, that thing with Gordon Dalziel where the microphone was live. And it's like, that was such a stupid, innocuous situation that like, you know what I mean? And so we'd done a mic test. And I'm thinking, who in North America is up at 3 o'clock in the morning listening to that? But anyway, it was such a learning curve. It was such a life lesson. I mean, it wasn't actually me that said it, but I was obviously in the studio in the conversation.
You feel a part of it?
Well, of course. Yeah. And of course, my name was in the paper the next day. Rangers having to answer a question on it. And you think to yourself, it was such a nonsense.
Yeah.
But it was a lesson of do not speak around live mics. You know what I mean? I mean, we obviously didn't realise the mics were live because it was somebody else's job to turn them off, but they didn't do it. Again, take accountability for yourself. Like, that is a lesson that I learned very early on, is that you actually can't rely on other people all the time. You need to be responsible for what comes out of your mouth. So just little things like that go along the way. And just be prepared. I mean, there's times where, sometimes you've maybe been too busy and your prep time's been less or whatever. I know what I need to be to be on it. And sometimes, you're driving to a game thinking, oh God, maybe could have done with another couple of hours or whatever. So
I suppose, see the one that I thought of, and I remember it at the time, it was the interview you done with Gerard.
Yeah.
And see, at that point, did you realise there was going to be as big a deal about it? Is it because obviously it was, you must have spoke to him pretty regularly as part of Rangers TV and things, and
I think I spoke to him more than his family actually most of the time.
And you obviously alluded to it earlier. He's come out and obviously had that agenda of, why would you ask a question like that? And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, it's a different thing. But did you realise it was going to have such a kind of...
No, not at all. I mean, honestly, I felt we had quite good banter anyway.
Yeah.
Like, as I do with like quite a lot of other managers. And it's like, you can be sort of cheeky and chipper and chirpy, as I would be at times with him though. He'd give me a one-word answer, I'd give him a one-word answer question back. You know what I mean? If when he'd say no, I'd be like, why? You know what I mean? So it was reciprocated in that way. He knew that question was coming. Yeah. I don't think that question was out of order.
Yeah.
And I always put myself in the position of the fans who are watching the interview or the viewers that are watching it. What do they want to know from this interview?
Yeah.
They want to know why you set up your team like that. They want to know what you think of the way they executed it. You want to think of what your view is of that player's behaviour at that point. And they want to know what you think about these stories linking you with somebody else, typically.
Yeah.
And so when he said it, I wasn't going to push him on it because I felt that less is more in that example. And, Yeah, I mean, it's a funny thing as well, though, is you talk about getting criticism from fans from like perhaps the other sides or teams that, you know, are not on your side.
Yeah.
The actual love that you get from that I get from the Rangers fans is incredible. It's amazing. Like they get so defensive of, you know, like, don't you dare speak to her like that. I feel like I honestly genuinely appreciate it because I think it's so lovely. But at times I just feel really bad because I'm like, it's okay. Don't worry. I'm fine. You know, it's totally fine, which is why I didn't say anything on social media initially because I thought I'm just going to let it die down.
Yeah.
The other thing was like when the Rangers fans were singing my name at Anfield. And a lot of people were like, that is so disrespectful. I mean, like, I've got a pretty good sense of humour. Like, you know, I love football banter. For me or against me, I love it. You know what I mean? I think it's what makes our game great.
Yeah.
And that to me was banter. I wasn't offended. I wasn't, you know, if anything, it made me laugh massively.
You must be one of the few broadcasters that's actually had a song by a set of fans. It's insane.
Our director was from down south, Gemma, and I could hear her saying, are they singing a song about Emma? And the floor manager was like, yep. And then she was like, we need to play some of this out. And I was like, not that one. Don't play that one on air. Please don't play that one. Because, oh my goodness, that wouldn't go down very well on air.
No.
But yeah, no, it was really funny. But yeah, as much as you do get criticism for negative things and people are quick to jump on you, on the other side of it, you get so much love out there from people who actually are, you know, either appreciate you because of what you do, whether it's at Rangers, Scottish football, rugby, whatever, you know, generally just appreciate how you do your job. And that's really nice.
Well, that's the thing, because it's not just, you do so many different sports, so there will be people that like you for different things as well. It's not just football now.
And that's the nice thing, you know, and it is the yin and yang of social media.
Yeah.
You know, that's why you can't get too high and you can't get too high, too low. Yeah. It's very much that just like, you know, I just think about how you would speak to somebody face to face, and would you go up to somebody and say that to their face? Yeah. If you wouldn't, don't put it out there. Yeah. You know what I mean? And it's like, just would you want somebody to talk to your wife or your mother or your sister like that? You know, or your daughter?
And once it's out there, it's out there.
Absolutely,
there's no kind of,
and that goes for anything. I mean, you know, you talk about. I mean, celebrities have it a lot worse than we do in sports media. I mean, God, the nonsense they have to put up with. Yeah, and it's just like, just think before you write, man. Just.
You must see that walking down the street with McCoy's TV. That must just be his life every day for.
Even Chris Sutton, though. I mean, Chris is a great guy. I mean, a lot of people won't want to hear that, but yes, he's a lovely bloke. Yeah. He's a great guy. I mean, I'm probably blowing his cover now. He's probably going to kill me for saying that. But you know what? He's a great guy. He's got a wicked sense of humour, a very dry sense of humour. Keeps us all on our toes and entertained on a sort of weekly basis. Yeah. And because he didn't play for the team that you support, you know, I mean. He winds people. Hugh Keevins is doing winding people up to get a rise out of folk. That's what happens. Yeah. You know, Chris has got a phone in. He wants people to phone in and have a go. That's what makes him relevant.
Well, it's like when people,
if you fall for the bait, it's your fault.
Talksport have done it for about 40 years. Yeah. They'll put things on Twitter and you're like, no.
Yeah.
But they obviously want you to phone in and lose your mind about this point for 10 minutes. But every time I hear Chris Sutton talk, I'm like, it's just like a fishing rod.
Totally.
It's just bait. Just dragging in hooks all the time.
But do you know what? He's lovely. And people say to me, well, what's he like? And I'm like, he's lovely. Oh. Like, what's wrong with you?
They expecting you like, I hate him.
I know.
Nightmare on set.
I know. But yeah, it's really funny. Like, you know, it could be anybody though. You know, Michael Stewart. Everybody's got different opinions on different people. But I have to say, every single person that I work with, you know, it's great. I enjoy working with them. Yeah. Whether they can say the same about me, I don't know. But that's their issue.
But it comes across like that as when on BT and Sky as well. It does come across that there is a good relationship between yourself and the panel that's there. Because obviously you're all there to watch the game. You all love the game. So there always that kind of thing in common. Anyway. And to be
honest, what we're talking about in the studio is exactly what we're talking about off air.
Yeah.
If we're sitting in the sort of Winnebago before we go into the studio, we're all debating the same stuff or nattering on about football or this, that and the other. You know what I mean? Like talking to each other. There might just be a few more swear words in it when we're talking off air than there are on air.
Well, but the same if you were in the pub, you'd be talking about the exact same stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's amazing how much crap we can talk about the same thing, really, just in a different way for hours on end.
Curious as to how you switch off, because I know your partner's a golfer as well, so you've just got sport everywhere, but what do you do to kind of switch off, or do you switch off at all from it?
It's difficult. I mean, I love food, like as stupid thing to say, but one of the highlights of my life is going out for food and like trying new food and cooking and different, like I just love food and I love wine. And so that to me, like if I go on holiday, I'm like, right, where are we eating? Like I don't really care about the castles and the art galleries. I've found the restaurants, you deal with the rest of it. So and my life revolves around where we're going to eat and drink. We went to New York and I was like, right, I've picked 5 restaurants. So like everything we did revolved around my reservations. She's like, for God's sake. But, so I like doing that. That's definitely something. And I'd love to actually do some sort of cookery show. Not me cooking, I might add. I mean, that maybe one day, but not quite. I wouldn't inflict that on anybody. But like, I'd love to do something, you know, where it comes to television and like film and stuff. Because I'm so interested in that type of thing. Or like wine going around vineyards or different things. I've done one marathon in my life and it was running through vineyards in Bordeaux. So that is an actual true story. So
how did that come about?
A friend of ours actually was diagnosed with MS years ago. And we decided that we were going to do a sporting challenge. And we looked at the sort of marathon calendar and I was like, oh, what about this one? And so there was 5 of us did it, three girls and 2 boys did it. And I mean, I was already a runner. I say a runner. I used to do about 10K a day, like in my peak, you know, do like
that's a runner.
Late 20s, I used to do that. And so just ramped it up. And so we trained and when was the marathon? I think it was like August to September. So you're pretty much training through summer. It's not one of these ones that people go to a marathon in January, slogging their ass off over Christmas. I couldn't be doing that. So it was strategically timed in the year. And I mean, what we hadn't really taken into account though was that vineyards are pretty much all shale and stones and sand. So after like 2 vineyards, we were like, oh my God, there's like another 38 kilometers to go. So we did it. I think it was just over 4 hours. So one and done. And it was amazing. You could actually taste the wine in every vineyard and we didn't stop once. I was like, I'll be sick if I taste that wine. I'll have a glass when I'm finished.
That's willpower right there.
But it was great. That was fun. So I like going to the gym and working out. Like I love skiing and different things like that, which again, I don't get to do really now because Becky obviously is still playing on tour. And having a broken arm or a leg is not great for a golfer. You know, again, touch wood. So we don't do it quite so much. But when she retires, she's in for a good skiing session, as it were, because I've built them up over the years now that she probably owes me about 5 weeks.
I was going to say, it's a restaurant, it's like, this is it. It's what you're going to do.
Exactly, So I like to do that. And to be honest, if I'm not working on sport, I'm watching it. Really, I watch anything, really. I mean, the sport on all the time.
But it must be an insight for you as well you're obviously living with someone who's in that environment of constantly competing. And I suppose it gives you a kind of massive insight into what you're talking about on a kind of daily basis.
And it's really interesting as well because there is that sort of golfer mentality where it's that thing where they concentrate for their shot and then they don't want to talk about golf in between. Like if I carry the bag for her, because I'm not going to use the word caddy because I don't have a clue what I'm doing. I'm just like, there's the putter. I once called the driver the big one, like the big driver. She's like, there's only one. Like it is big, but that's I was like, oh yeah, very good, Emma. So I let her do her own yardages. I'm not getting caught up in all of that. But just how different it is. You know, like football and rugby, you're sort of in the zone for the whole game. Whereas that's very much, you know, a few seconds where you step up, you've got your minute, 60 seconds, whatever it is to take your shot. And then it's like switch, right? So what we do for dinner or whatever it is in between, you know what I mean? So it's very different. And it's nice. It's nice to go on tour and see how they do it as well. She played in an event in America a couple of years back and I was with her and I'd just been walking around. I wasn't caddying that for her then. And we were in the clubhouse and this guy came over to me and he was like, he sort of had his phone behind him and I was like, what's this guy doing? He sort of came up and he's like, excuse me. So Becky's sitting next to me and this guy's talking to me and I'm like, and he's like, I'm really sorry to ask, but I've got my dad on Zoom and I just wondered if you would mind talking to him. He's not keeping very well. And I was like, sorry, who do you think I am? He went, Annika Sorenstam. And I was like, I am definitely not Annika Sorenstam. No, I am not Annika Sorenstam. I was like, no, I'm definitely not her. And he went, all right, but would you mind just talking to me anyway? And I was like, hi, and this guy in the middle of America, I mean, I was like this amazingly famous golfer, and I was like, I don't know whether to be sort of flattered by that because she's very talented, but she's probably at least 10 years older than me. So I'm like, I don't know if I've had a hard day here or what. Becky was like, what is going on here? Like, this guy thinks
so random.
It was ridiculous. It was so funny, honestly. And I felt like really bad because obviously he thought he was talking to somebody quite famous and interesting. It was just me. I was like,
I love that he still went through it and went, well, we're here now. So.
I know, probably built it up to his wee dad. And anyway, I was like, well, you have a nice night. bye. So yeah, that was random.
Who's the most who's been the most intimidating person that you've spoke to, or that you've found that you got a wee bit more nervous round?
Maybe Sir Alex Ferguson. Just again, not sure what was going to happen. You know, that way you're just a bit
presence,
like,
I
don't know. And he was actually great. He was fine. He was absolutely lovely. He was great. Who else have I interviewed? I interviewed Ronaldo, but it was in a sort of mixed zone. It was a mixed zone. It was after Champions League draw, so it was just this massive scrum. I mean, if you get an insight into somebody's life, I mean, oh my God, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like from walking from one end of the corridor to the other end of the corridor to me, he had about 50 people, like grown men jumping into selfies, like with him walking behind them. And I'm like, what's happening? And you know what way? And he came in and he was so nice, shaking hand, hi, I'm Cristiano, and you know, like really pleasant. Yeah. And I only had 2 questions with him because of timing. But he was very nice, very pleasant. David Beckham was another one that I interviewed in Dubai, and my word, like the entire shopping mall was sold out. He was opening an Adidas store. Jeez. Nobody was allowed in the shop, so they couldn't even get into the shop, but everyone was on, you know, those shopping malls that basically have the railings around and like a big hole in the middle, so you can sort of see down all the tiers.
Just to see him open there.
Just to see, I mean, like, I don't even think 90% of them would have even seen him. And so we were allowed in the shop because we were allowed to take videos, and we were allowed 10 seconds to stand next to him and take a photo. I mean, I'm not kidding you, it was ridiculous. And so I said, hello, David, welcome to Dubai. And the PR person shot me a look as to say, you're not allowed to talk to him. Wow. And I was like, oh God, get over yourself. Like, really?
J-Lo.
I know. I mean, really? So yeah, I mean, so that was really weird. And like, and then on the other side of it, like over there, did like an hour Q&A with Rory McIlroy, and he could not have been nicer. Like, could not be bothered with the PR, the time constraint, nothing. Just really chilled out, relaxed, nice, lovely. Nice. So strange.
Do you have a favourite?
Do I have a favourite interview? That hour with Rory McIlroy actually was really nice. It was before the Rio Games, so he obviously wasn't going because of Zika. Yeah. So there's a big elephant in the room, but he was, you know, just pretty upfront about it all. You know,
he seems like a pretty chill guy.
Yeah. Daniel Ricciardo is another guy that actually, he's brilliant.
Oh man.
I mean, I did an interview with him when he was still with Red Bull. I mean, that's such a weird day as well. We went up to the Dubai Autodrome, and David Coulthard was there because he was a test driver. Let me get this the right way around. A test driver for Infinity. So Red Bull.
Yep.
But obviously the face of Mercedes from his driving days, I believe, if that's the right way around. So it was the new Infinity, like track car. So it wasn't like an F1 car. So he drove me around this track. Nice. And I'm not kidding you. Oh my God. I thought I was going to die. Like, I literally thought I was going to die. There's this mass acceleration, mass braking, you know, that way. And he's just chatting away about, oh, so you're from Loch Lomond? No, that's nice. Yeah, bloody hell, it's freezing in there. Yeah, and basically about how
your life's flashing before your eyes.
Yeah, exactly. My life's flashing before my eyes, and he's talking about how his manhood shrunk when he jumped in Loch Lomond because it was so cold. I was like, this is the most bizarre car journey I've ever been on. And Daniel Ricciardo was still at Red Bull then with Vettel. Right. So we were doing them and then, like, you know, interviewing them, and they were just like, I mean, Sebastian was a bit drier. Yeah. That's just his personality. Yeah. But Daniel was brilliant. He was such a hoot. You know, and you think to yourself, man, they're just so relaxed when they're in their own little space. That's quite nice.
It's weird though that you get people that are so intense, and then you've got people like them who are still at the top of their game, but they're just so chilled. And
oh yeah. I mean, Virat Kohli's another one, the cricketer. Yeah. Again, just that sort of huge subcontinent support for cricket in the Middle East, and like going to a hotel to interview him. And I mean, it was like J-Lo was there. I mean, it was everywhere, people. And like, you couldn't get moved, and people just could not believe that he was in the building. And even the businessmen who were back in the league and stuff financially, who were all like little kids. Because they were going to get their photo taken with Virat Kohli. You know what I mean? It's amazing. Do you know who's actually one of my favourite interviews? Brett Lee, the Australian cricketer. Yeah. I grew up watching England cricket because again, my dad's from Newcastle, and I used to love the Ashes, and I used to love Brett Lee. I hated them because they were such wind-up merchants, but I loved them because of what they were. Yeah, Shane Warne and Brett Lee. I loved it. And I was actually at Durham for a one-dayer, and he popped his Achilles, and that was the last time he played in a limited over for Australia. Right. Fast forward however many years, and he was in Dubai to do some cricket coverage, and he came into our studio, and oh my God, we had such a laugh with him because he sang a song from when he was out playing in the subcontinent. So we had that playing. We're like, what the hell was going through your head when you were putting this together? And he was just such a great guy. I mean, him and Adam Gilchrist, another one, like proper stand-up guys, brilliant. Like, honestly.
Did you tell him you hated him?
I was like, oh, man, I used to totally jeer you when you were sledging, I said. But then he was properly one of my favourites. Like, so, yeah, I just used to love them. I used to love how they played the game.
Yeah.
Brilliantly and just with such an attitude.
Well, but they could do the skill, but they've also got the dirty side of it as well. They're happy to get the sleeves rolled up.
You can't really have one without the other. No. I mean, there's a few footballers that have got one without the other, haven't they? They've either got the patter, but they've not got the ability, or vice versa.
You need both.
Yeah, you need both. So, yeah, it's pretty broad spectrum, really.
Anyone that you've not spoken to that you would like to, or anything that you'd like to work with?
Lindsay Vonn, because I'm massively into my skiing.
Yeah.
And I was in South Korea at the Olympics when she raced for the last time in the Olympics. And Becky was actually playing an event in Evian. And she was there, Lindsay Vonn was there, and I'm not kidding you. Becky phoned me, she's like, oh my God, you're not going to guess who I've just had my photo taken with. And I was like, who? She's like, Lindsay Vonn. I was like, no way. I was absolutely furious, that she'd got her photo taken with Lindsay Vonn and I hadn't. And then she's like, I'm only joking, we just saw her in the reception of the hotel. And I was like, oh, good. And she was like there with her dog and stuff. Like, I was so full of admiration.
Like FaceTime now.
I know. And so she's definitely one that I would love to interview. Steffi Graf, another one, my absolute stand-up sporting idol as a kid growing up. Like, I loved her. I mean, I sat up a tree and cried when she got knocked out of Wimbledon in the first round. Like,
she used to dominate Wimbledon.
Amazing. I mean, that's pretty much the era I grew up in.
Yeah.
Loved it. I mean, Steffi Graf, and I've never ever interviewed her either. So I'd love to do that. She does quite a lot of charity work now. She lives in Vegas with Andre Agassi, her husband. So
Q&A with both of them.
And I mean, living the actual dream. I need to get involved in some sort of corporate gig to make that happen.
That would be immense.
Yeah, so that's cool. But Federer and Djokovic, again, out working in Dubai, all the major tennis guys come out there.
Yeah.
So sit down with Federer, sit down with Andy Murray, sit down with Nadal. So so unattainable.
Yeah.
If you think about the way the media works over here.
Yeah.
But over there is the sort of rights holder and host broadcaster, you'd get it all the time. I mean, it was mad.
Do you ever sit and have just I can't believe I'm actually doing this?
Yeah, sometimes.
At this point in time, you're sitting across something, you're like, what is happening here?
Yeah. I mean, going to my first Olympics in Rio, I, again, used to, I mean, I don't know how I didn't have square eyes as a kid. I don't know how I wasn't obese and have square eyes, because I used to just sit in front of the telly, basically for Wimbledon, then the Olympics, the World Cups. My mum would kick me out and be like, come back when you're hungry. But yeah, going to an Olympics is just an amazing thing to do.
That's incredible.
Do you know what I mean? Going in, I loved it. Just my tiny little role in it, but it was amazing. I was just like a kid at Christmas.
We had the women's Euros as well, didn't you?
World Cup. Women's World Cup in France. That was incredible, especially because Scotland were there. It was amazing. It was absolutely incredible. And you think, even in the short space of time that's evolved since then, how the women's game's grown. It's incredible. And it's brilliant to see, because it's fully justified. But that was a small snippet into what was happening, and it was amazing. And like I say, especially because Scotland were there.
What's even better, because it doesn't happen that often.
Yeah, and I mean, everywhere else we're still waiting, aren't we? But yeah, even the Euros, I mean, what year was that? I feel like the past few years have morphed into 2000? 2001? When did the Euros actually? I mean, when did Scotland play Hampden?
Was it 2020?
2020, I think it was.
Or was it?
No, because COVID was 2021.
Didn't they? Yeah, it was 2021.
So that in itself was fantastic, and I mean, the fact I can't even remember. It doesn't seem much from my mind.
The last time before that, I was at school, France 98.
Yeah.
I'm like, this will happen every couple of years. I'm like, no.
Well, that was when I was early Doors Radio Clyde, and I was like, it's normal. It's totally normal.
How wrong were we?
Yeah, absolutely.
How wrong were we? This is quite a hard one, but obviously we get a lot of people listening to the show that are kind of 15, 16, at that age that you were, that are like, maybe I want to do this as a job, or I want to do it as a career. What advice would you give to someone in that position, kind of based on your experiences through it all? If
they're trying to get into media now. Yeah. I mean, I think, I was going to say it's never been easier, but it's probably never been harder either, because, I mean, diversity is a massive thing now as well, which I think is amazing. It's fantastic and long overdue. So the door's not closed to anybody anymore. You know what I mean? If that's your dream, then there is genuinely an opportunity for you to go and do it. And so that is a first point that's brilliant. So if that's your dream, pursue it. You know what I mean? Don't let anybody tell you can't do it. And secondly, like, sort of try and nail down what it is you want to do and then go and create content. I mean, that was a door that wasn't really open when I was trying to break in, because I didn't have a sound engineer and a camera and a producer, which is what it was back then. You know, and like, you can basically just go on YouTube, or you can, you know, upload to your own website. You can go and do little TikToks, or you can go, I mean, I don't even know what half of these things are. I'm so old. Snapchat. I mean, what? But yeah, create your own content. It's not like, now social media is almost your CV. It's not a bit of paper like it was when you and I started out. So
no letters here now.
You know, and it is like, there's internships all the time. You know, if you do want to go down the university route, you can still be doing something side by side, creating your own content for free. You know, even if you're going to a football game on a Saturday, do your own little match report when you get back, or, you know what I mean? Like, you actually can, that you have a platform now to show people and to send somebody a link and say, look, this is me. That if that's what you want to do, and if you're doing that off your own back, it shows brilliant initiative for anyone that's looking. And more now, you have to be a sort of content creator. You have to be a sort of self-content creator. Because I say, when I first started, it was very much a team thing. You had all these different roles that people filled. Nowadays, you're basically taking your own camera, half the time your phone, filming yourself with your own mic, or doing it in your house, or doing it in a podcast studio like this. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many ways to do it. That I think that if you do have a dream, and reach out to people. Like, I mean, it's never also been easier to ask for advice. DM people. You know, I mean, most people's DMs are open, or you can at least get in. And so I just think ask for advice, because, you know, as long as you're not piling in with abuse, most people will come back to you.
There's a difference.
Maybe just the first address might be quite crucial in that. How you. A word of advice.
It's a bit of critique.
So, you know, ask for advice, because there's a lot of people out there that are willing to pass it down if you're looking for it. But yeah, just look at what other people are doing, you know, and really, I think there's a definite market of just finding your own little niche. You know, do you want to be one of the more sort of funny, quirky, you know, sort of personalities? Or are you looking to be more of a journalist, like a written journalist? If you are, write stuff, submit it in, because there are editors all over the place looking, you know, and it's never been more platforms. They're looking for their online, they're looking for their social media feeds to be filled, they're looking for their newspapers still. You know what I mean? There's loads of outlets now that social media offers. And so just chase it, chase your dream.
Love that. Anything you wish you'd done differently?
Nah, not really. Not as far as work's concerned. I think everything happens for a reason. And I sort of think every opportunity that happens then leads to something else. So, yeah, I mean, you meet people along the way, you form relationships with them. And, you know, a lot of the time I find that you meet somebody here and then you re-encounter them here, and that's when something else happens. Do you know what I mean? Like, you know, even like when I worked at Rangers, I first came into contact with a guy called Colin Davidson, who worked in the media. And then I went and moved to Paris. And it wasn't until I was in Paris, I got an email from Colin saying, would you ever think about coming home? I'm looking for some staff for Setanta. And I'd be like, yeah, absolutely. Came home, had a meeting with him. He then said 2 days later, you know what I mean? Like, your pitch side, you know, I want you to be the pitch side reporter. And I was like, what? Well, are you sure? Do you know what I mean? Though, but like, and then, you know, that happens. And then through working at Setanta, I met like Grant Phillips and Davy Carton, who are both directors. Davy's a director at Sky, Grant's director of Sunset and Vine and BT. And, you know, he does like World Cups and lots of other things. So, you know, I first started to work with him then. Standard goes down, we all disperse. Then when I'm working at Sky in London, Grant's working down there for ESPN and various other people. You pass me again. Grant then starts working at BT, asks me if I want to come and join him. You know what I mean? It's like the media is actually quite a small industry when you get into it. And I just think you have to treat people the way you want to be treated. You know what I mean? Because on your way up, you'll meet them on your way back down.
100%.
It happens all the time. And I think that goes for any walk of life.
Well, it's so, as you say, it's so closely knit as well. So you're going to bump into these people again at some point.
I mean, and it's just treat people the way you want to be treated. I mean, it's such a simple thing to say, but, you know, there's a lot of people that behave very irrational at times.
Yeah.
Whether that's in front or behind of the camera.
Yeah.
You know, and it just, there's no need for it. You know, something happens a lot of the time in the heat of the moment, which is fair enough. But majority of the time you have to be the bigger person and be like, you know, take action, you know, for what you've done. And then, you know, that's how things resolve themselves. So yeah, I just think follow your dreams, man, see what happens.
Love that.
Stay off the bucky.
In Glasgow. Jeez. We'll finish with what's your plans for the next couple of years?
Honestly, I don't know. I mean, I'm loving life right now.
Yeah.
I'm really loving it. You know, I've been doing some more Champions League this year, you know, through a lot of opportunities that have opened up, which have been fantastic. You know, I've really loved it. And that brings its own pressure. It's how you deal with the pressure, you know, which is a massive learning curve for me as well. You know, when you asked earlier, do you still get nervous? I mean, every time I do something new for the first time is nerve-wracking, you know, and so I just want to hopefully keep improving, keep doing well, and just keep getting asked back. You know what I mean? As long as you get asked back, that's it.
Surely you're past that point now. You're always going to get asked back.
Well, again, like I say, you're only as good as your last broadcast. So you can never rest on your laurels. That's something that I firmly believe in. So keep staying prepared. You know, Claire Balding said once, you know, the only person that looks stupid if you're not prepared is you. You don't prepare, you look stupid on camera. And it's so true, because if you go on undercooked, it's like a player that goes on a pitch undertrained. You know what I mean? The only person that's going to get found out is yourself. So I try and live by that every week. And, you know, and so long as you do that, I just want to keep on doing what I'm doing. I love it. You know what I mean? I love it. You know, if I can keep doing the rugby and the football and get a few more holidays in. Skiing holidays. Becky, sunny holidays.
Dream job then?
Yeah, honestly, I love it. I really do. And I just, you know, I wish everybody could love their job as much as I love mine, and I'm very lucky. You know what I mean? I'm very lucky to be where I am, but it's been hard work at times.
It's not just easy at the end. It took a while to get there.
Yeah, but it's good fun, and I just want to keep having fun. And, you know, so long as the work-life balance is good, then I think everyone can keep enjoying themselves.
Definitely. Emma, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been magic.
Thank you.